I'd call to order the meeting, Finance Committee, March 25th, 2021, via Zoom. If you need to ask a question, raise your hand by either raising your hand or using the hand raising associated with the Zoom meeting. I'd like to open it up to see if there's any public participation. I didn't receive any in advance. Okay, seeing none, no public participation. We got a series of minutes to review. The first minutes were from the Finance Committee, DPW Subcommittee meeting of March 3rd. And I think I added that to the packet that they were in last month's, last meeting and this meeting. Any motion to accept the meeting minutes for DPW Subcommittee? So moved. Dennis, any second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, David. Any discussion? All right, those on the subcommittee in favor of the meeting minutes for DPW? Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Thank you. Those were accepted. We have capital planning subcommittee meeting minutes. I don't know if I received those, Steve. I didn't have those in the packet. And I think is Joe the chair of that?
Joe is the chair of that. However, Frank Leone is here. We can table those. Did we?
Yeah,
Frank?
I'll table. Yeah, Frank is here for the capital, and we'll table the minutes. I didn't have them, and you all don't have them. So table that. The next is the March 11th meeting minutes. Any comments, discussion on the March 11th Finance Committee meeting minutes? I was made aware of one correction through one of the members, Gerard, item number 8. It indicates Superintendent Doug Lyons and Business Manager Doug Lyons. That should obviously be Business Manager Christine Bufagna. Stephen will make that edit.
Already been made, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank Gerard Lehman for his diligence in reviewing my work.
Yes.
You write so well. It's compelling literature, Steve.
Yeah, it is.
I'll move approval.
Seconded.
Excellent. Any additional discussion on the meeting minutes from 3/11? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Is there anyone opposed? Unanimous. Okay, thank you. Approval of the meeting minutes from 3/17, Finance Committee Health Insurance Subcommittee meeting minutes.
This is Dan. I'll move approval.
I'll second.
Seconded by Dawn. Very good. Any discussion? Those on the subcommittee, those in favor of voting on these minutes?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Approved unanimously. Okay. So like I said, the school group will be joining us 7:30-ish. They had another meeting they were squeezing in tonight, so I was going to take it out of order anyway, Steve. Would we like to?
Yeah, if you don't mind dropping to the articles and maybe talking the real property assessment and the personal property assessment, which are sponsored by the Board of Assessors. Director of Assessment, Victor Santinello, was here. I don't know if Kevin's going to give a brief overview, or are you going to turn it right over to Victor, or how do you want to do it, Kevin?
Go right to Victor.
Okay.
Oh, speak to me. Okay. Let's see. The first article that we have is Article 11, revaluation of all real properties. Over the past couple of years, the Department of Revenue changed the requirements from a triennial certification to a 5-year certification. And what this proposal will do is bring in outside assistance from Patriot Properties. They will assist me with attaining all the goals of a state mandated revaluation. This is the year the DOR actually comes into the office and goes through everything, your methodology, your rates, your tables, everything. Although they review stuff yearly and we revalue yearly, every 5 years is, I guess you can equate to an exam. And the cost of this article, the revalue, over 9,300 real estate accounts and about 460 town-owned or church-owned, things like that, non-taxable accounts, is $38,000. And this is once every 5 years.
All right, great. Excuse me. Any comments, board members?
I think we did discuss this during the budget process too. There were some reductions in the budget to pull this out. And Kevin might want to expound on that.
We did lower Victor's budget by, I believe, about $12,000 to $15,000, knowing that we would need both additional help in the both real and personal property valuation in this coming year. So we did reduce the operating budget based on these two articles. This first article, Victor, if I'm correct, is for $38,000.
Very good. Thank you both. Again, any questions from the board members? Seeing none. All right, Victor, second one.
Second article is the same, except this is for the recollection of business personal property accounts. We have 661 taxable accounts, which includes our public utilities and things of that nature. Every year I request data from building owners, tell us what you have and all that stuff. And I use a company called Real Estate Research Consultants. Their specialty is business personal property. Once every 10 years, to coincide with a certification, we have them canvass the entire town. They will review all 600 accounts, add any new accounts, delete any old accounts, and review undervalued accounts. Because this is a little more labor intensive and they will be going to businesses, get in them when they're open, what have you. The cost of this article, I believe, is either 44 or 45,000, which
45.
also includes a new requirement from the Department of Revenue, where we have to perform appraisals for our utility companies. And with our biggest utility company here, that's something we don't want to mess up. So I'd rather, rely on people they value these things in many other cities and towns, not just Wakefield. So I'd rather rely on their expertise than my limited knowledge of the subject.
Kevin, anything to add? So that's an article for 45,000, correct?
That's correct.
And
Okay.
can I just add, that would be, we'd see that article again in 10 years, Victor, if everything stayed.
Yeah, the way we've been running personal property is once every 10 years, we do a full data recollection. Every year, we try to pick up 50, 60 of our largest accounts to make sure that, well, our money makers are making money.
And I have a question on that. Every 10 years, does this vendor go to each office for an audit or just reevaluating the accounts you have on site, if you would?
Every year they review the forms of lists that are submitted to me
Right.
By businesses. And they will make an attempt to visit every place that they can. They'll set aside a period over a couple of weeks. They'll come back. Some of the bigger accounts, they'll do callbacks, understanding with various COVID protocols. It's going to be difficult to get in. But hopefully they'll be able to enter enough and talk to enough people to ensure the accuracy of the data.
And from this audit, you mentioned the utilities, so we're we're always intrigued by the utilities assets and the value thereof for the in lieu of tax payment. Is that something, when you
No,
say,
it's not the Wakefield Public Utilities.
all right, so it's not their assets, something different.
No, this is NSTAR, Boston Gas, New England Power.
Got it. Thank you. Anybody else?
So Victor, who does the MLD's assets? You
Nobody.
people?
The MLD performs their own asset audit. We do not place a value on them, on their business personal property. Their real estate, of course, has valuation.
But their assets, poles and wire, they self-evaluate that, I believe, Dennis.
Yes.
Okay, but no one checks it to see if it's in compliance with the other utilities.
I wouldn't know how to measure a public utility with a privately owned company.
Well,
I
just
think, I think
wire and stuff like that, the people that you're hiring to do the N-Star and that, could they do the MLD additionally? To give us
I'm sure if you wanted to pay them, they could. But that is not currently included in the scope of the project because it's not a source of revenue generation from a taxation standpoint.
Oh, you're bringing up sore subjects, guys.
Yeah, Dennis, it's just you and I that evaluate their assets.
If I had a thought bubble,
I was just looking for a little help.
There you go.
Dennis, 100%.
Dan, you have your hand up, please.
Yeah, so Victor, I'm gonna change subjects a little bit.
I gotta go, bye.
Don't do that to me. So I am trying to figure out new growth for 2022, and actually more important is 23. And I've been bugging Steve, so now I get to bug you. I've got 2.5 million as a ballpark for fiscal 22. And it's based on a lot of stuff's going on. Plus we're gonna get the power line, of course. But what I'm really concerned about is my number for 23. I've got it dropping down to 1.3 million on the assumption that the power line is now, done in the books and we're going forward. But there's so much building going on in Wakefield. Something tells me my 1.3 million for 23 is going to be too low. And I wonder if you could give me any insight into what your thinking is regarding new growth. For 21, we're at 1.2 million. And I got to believe we're going to be above 1.3 for 23, but I'd like to know your thoughts.
Well, we are gonna have a bunch of new condo units come online. I have not seen any data regarding the power lines. That will come through and be forwarded directly to real estate research consultants. And when we get a number from them, I have to have a discussion with Steve and Kevin. Because of case law at the appellate tax board, we may want to issue a higher value that comes back. But then again, we also have to be prepared to fund a fight for that value. If it's a cost benefit analysis that makes sense to do so, then I'd bring it up obviously to Steve and Kevin up for discussion. But I have no idea what that final number is going to be. I mean, the old game is they're going to lowball us and we're going to try to substantiate it outside and then, try to make a fair valuation of it. As far as condominium construction goes, I've been very aggressive at trying to bring new units on early. Sometimes this comes with adjustments to those units. If they aren't 100% finished, I may bring them online at say 75% interest, thereby deferring, actually getting the new growth in earlier and having a portion of it for the following year. But I honestly will not have a clearer picture on that till July or August, right before I start working with the Department of Revenue and Patriot Properties on revaluation.
Okay.
So I gave a lot of words there and no answers. How was that?
Yeah, I was just say that you're spot on there. A lot of words, no answers.
The
I'm trying
team
to
is
put a-
sticking together.
I'm trying to put a number down here and he's not helping me.
Steve's used to it by now. In the old days, he'd ask me in January and I'd just leave and get a coffee and wait for him to leave.
Well, as soon as you have some inkling for 23, I'd love to hear it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But
Okay.
again, you know, it's not wanting to do the work. We are a Chapter 653 community, and we can grab new growth value up until June 30th of this year.
Mhm.
So that's why, you know, I'm not going to do piecemeal now and then try to complete the rest of it because I'm replicating processes and I don't want to double count things. I'd rather sit down and do it all at once. So, yeah, after we do properties in their percent completion around June 30th.
All right. I'll see you June 30th.
July 1st, you mean?
Okay, July 1st. All right. Thank you, Victor.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Victor? Is that all for Victor? I think, Steve, correct?
I think that is. Thank you, Victor.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
folks. Have a good evening.
See you.
Yeah.
All right. Excuse me. You want to talk capital, Steve? What would you like to do next? I see Jay is here, but we could.
I guess I would go to Jay Pacone. I mean, we love Frank. Frank can hang in there a few minutes, right? Frank, you don't mind? Is Joe Bertrand going to join us later?
Pardon me?
Does Frank know if Joe Bertrand is joining us tonight?
Joe is not. Joe's doing interviews tonight. He was tied up.
Okay. All right. So then maybe Jay, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for
And
having. Thanks
Jay,
for
you're
having.
representing the budget for the Northeast schools, correct?
I am, yes.
Thank you. Go ahead.
All right. Thanks for having me. I just wanted to let you know, Mr. DeBarry couldn't attend tonight. He had another engagement, but I'll be happy to speak with you about our budget process and how we got to our FY22 budget. So the goal of all of our budgets when we set out to produce them on an annual basis is always twofold. We always want to, first of all, minimize our financial impact to member communities. And we understand that Wakefield, like any other town, is under significant financial constraints. You have Prop 2.5 guiding how much money you can raise via taxation. So, and also we have other departments. So you've got other departments, and such as your regular school department, they need to fund fully and adequately. So we're very cognizant when we develop our budgets on an annual basis, and we always keep that in mind. And secondly, we aim to provide an adequate level of funding to learning and foster educational excellence, because ultimately that's what we're here to do. We're here to be Wakefield's other school, an excellent vocational pathway for the students of Wakefield to attend. We want Wakefield to be proud of the services that we offer the students. And we want to be as excellent as Wakefield Public Schools as a vocational option. And thirdly, this year was a little different because we had the Student Opportunity Act was reintroduced in FY22. It was originally put in the FY21 budget as an infusion into our Chapter 70 funding. That was actually pulled in the revised budget due to COVID. So they reinstated that in the FY22 budget, and we need to, we had to add positions within the budget that are related to the Student Opportunity Act in FY22. So regionalization exists by definition to offer services at a reduced cost to member communities. And like I said, we try to use as many offsets as possible. We try to keep your assessments as low as possible. And whenever we're developing our budget, we always want to keep the assessments at or below a 3% increase. This year, we actually came in right at 3%, which is not a little bit higher than we normally come in. However, there were some reasons for that due to the fact that the Chapter 70 funding was significantly compared to years past. So for instance, in FY 20 to 21, pre-COVID, we were projected to receive around $1.1 million in additional Chapter 70 funding, which included the Student Opportunity Act funding. This was great because the fact of the matter was it was $450,000 in positions, and the additional, which was related to the Student Opportunity Act, the additional money was used to fund our regular contractual obligations that increase on an annual basis, such as our steps and lanes and regular salary increases, health insurance costs, etc. When the FY 21 budget was cut mid-year, we actually had to cut $780,000 from our budget mid-year after COVID hit, and the state finally revised their budget projections and approved the budget. So we were able to cut that 780 without reducing any staffing, which was a great success. However, we're still left with revenue shortfalls. And even though we received $450,000 more than the revised FY 21 amount in Chapter 70 for FY 22, it's still that $450,000 just covers the positions that are required to be put back into the budget due to the Student Opportunity Act that the state has mandated that we fund. So there's some fiscal challenges there. We do intend to use an additional, we have a transportation reimbursement fund, and what that regions are able to get reimbursed for their transportation costs. We're projected to receive, or we're going to use $1.2 million in transportation revenue that we receive in FY 21 this year and use it to offset the FY 22 budget costs. Without that, it would be a significant assessment increase for the member communities, but we use as much as we possibly can in order to reduce that burden. And we also use $2 million from our other funding sources, such as E&D and our capital fund, to further reduce assessment costs. In the past couple of years, we've been planning for this building project to get off the ground. And we were able to, over a multi-year, with a multi-year financial plan, come up with ways that we wouldn't have to assess the cities and towns for the feasibility money that was required, which was over $2 million. So we started putting money away, and I'm happy to report that we didn't actually have to assess cities and towns at all for that additional money, because we understand that would be a great burden for them. So in total, we plan to use $3.2 million of other funds to reduce the member assessments. It's the resulting revenue increase is $649,763, which is just under $650,000 that we're going to use to reduce the operating budget costs in order to bring the assessments down.
If I can jump in for 1 second, Mr.
Sure, you
Chairman?
can.
Sure. I think that the real driver here for us in our vocational school budget increasing is that for Wakefield, is that it's based on 18 more students in next school year than this year, which is jumping from 82 to 100. So it's about a 22% increase in students. That's the real driver why the
Yes.
vocational school budget is going up.
Absolutely. Did you want me to continue, Steve, or did you?
No, I think maybe, I don't know if Kevin wanted to jump in, if Jim had any questions.
yeah.
Would, yeah.
Sorry, I maybe gave you too much information.
No, that was a good overview, believe me. Thank you. Yep.
You're welcome.
Kevin, anything?
Yes, the vocational school budget where the Northeast Voc is the biggest portion of that budget. We also do fund students at Minuteman Regional in Essex North out of this budget. As Steve and Jay both said, there's an 18 student increase at the Northeast Regional. Their budget is going up $301,074 over the current year. The Minuteman budget is going up $6,366 over the current year. Down at Minuteman, they're charging the Wakefield student that's there now, a capital fee of approximately $6,000 a year to attend Minuteman. In the Essex North, last year we had 6 students budgeted there. Or actually, this year we had 6 students budgeted there. 9 actually ended up attending. A couple will be graduating. So this budget, we are anticipating 7 students being there, in addition of 1 over the current year that is budgeted. The total budget request for the vocational school budget is $1,909,388. So a total increase of $335,115 for the 3 schools.
Yes. Okay, I will open it up for questions. Dan, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I had a question for Jay. As I understand it, the Northeast budgets typically goes up about 3%. And I'm wondering if you could carve out a little bit of time to go down the hill and talk to our superintendent and business manager about keeping their budget to 3%. It'd really be great if you could do that.
Okay. We can have,
Well played.
And it's really a shame they're not on the call right now to
I
hear
was
your
just
3%.
gonna say something. I was just gonna say that.
I do have a question for Kevin, I think, if he's the right guy. So I understand that the transportation cost for the Northeast Regional doesn't go, that portion doesn't go up because it's all, Wakefield students. But if we have more students going to Minuteman and Essex North, how is it that our transportation costs don't go up?
Right now, the transportation cost of getting the 7 students to Essex North is probably about $8,000 a year. The rest of it is for the 1 student getting to Minuteman. It's a very expensive transportation to get one. You can't get a bus for 1 student. In the past, we have worked with Melrose. That may be something we can look at to try to rein in these costs, but it is a very expensive to get that 1 student down to Lexington.
Okay, so in terms of transportation costs, it's not all the students, it's just those that don't have transportation in other means that we have to pick up, and we only have a few. Okay, all right, that makes sense.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. I'm done, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you. Joanne?
Yeah, I was wondering if we know what drove the increase in enrollment and where the students are coming from. Are they new to the school district, or are they, was this COVID related? Any insight at all?
I will say that we did have, I think a lot of it is COVID related. I noticed in other districts, such as some of our larger districts, we did notice a decrease in enrollment. So I think it's just a fluctuation, probably based on COVID. But I will say that Wakefield has had a steady influx of students. It's been going up over the past few years.
Did the vote, were you less remote during COVID?
No, well, we were remote until around December, and then we went hybrid. Given the fact that we have so many communities that were in the red, far in the red, some of the most highest impact communities, that we weren't allowed to bring kids in. But then on December 3rd, we did start a hybrid model.
But that didn't necessarily have anything to do with the new enrollments for the coming year.
Probably not. I mean,
Okay.
in terms
I was
of,
just wondering whether parents, in Wakefield, given that you said other districts saw decreases, whether the proximity played a factor. But just trying to get some insight, because I know, Steve, you've indicated, this is something that we should better understand for planning and forecasting purposes.
I can certainly talk to my, the director of, and then see if he has any insight into whether or not, to what this is related to.
Is your overall enrollment increasing?
Overall enrollment increased by 10.
Okay. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? Jay, my question, so what is the per student assessment? Steve said we had about 300 kids, so is that 3,000 and change? Just
We have 100 at the Voc.
You have 100. I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Yeah. All right. Yeah.
100.
So your per student assessment equates to, I'm looking at it right here, 17,322 per student.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Gerard.
Thanks, Jim. Ms. McComb, real quick, and forgive me if this is inferable from other answers, but when you guys get your new school, do you anticipate any other operational budget challenges because of that? I know when we contemplate the new high school and with Galvin, we had to weigh the costs of modular school spaces. I don't know how that works in a Voc, quite the same as desktop learning situation. So I was just curious and maybe I'm looking out a couple periods. I recognize that, but just curious, since we have you, if you could hypothesize about that a little bit. Should we be thinking about that as a cost driver as well, if in the current period or future periods?
I think it's a little pretty far down the road. I can speak to the budget. I'm sorry, the building project. I know Steve and Mr. DeBarry would like me just to make a little blurb about where we are in the this whole process. So, well, as Steve knows, so we're in. We finished the feasibility stage. We're in the schematic design stage. So, in terms of numbers at this time, we're scheduled to meet with the bond council at the end of April to kind of get a sense of what the impact of this building project is going to look like. And then we go to MSBA at the end of August on August 25th to move forward with the project. So, but to answer your question, I'm sorry, I didn't answer your question, but
Oh, it's fine. You kind of did. I suspected I might have been pulling up a little early on that one. So
Yeah.
if it's too early, then
there are going to be additional costs associated with a brand new facility that we don't deal with right now. I would imagine so.
Roger that. Thank you. Thanks, Jim.
Very good. Any other questions for Jay in the Northeast Voc or the rest of the Voc schools through Kevin?
If I could just say one thing, we have a great partnership with the vocational school. It's working really well. We have a student resource officer up there that they fund through their budget. So that makes a big difference. And we do training up there for our police and fire. We had a vaccine clinic up there, or excuse me, a testing clinic up there. A real great partnership that's come a long way over the early years when we were arguing about the GIC or health insurance. So we've come a long way.
Through that. Very good. All right, I think we're good on that budget. Jay, thanks for joining us.
Thank you,
Oh,
Jay. Thank you.
Take care, guys.
All right, we have Cablevision health insurance and/or Frank. You want to move to capital?
That's you, Frank.
Yep.
Frank and Joe.
There's my microphone.
There's Joe also. Thank you.
Do we have the presentation ready?
I can get it. 1 second.
Jim, you might have to let Joe share if he's going to put something up there as the host.
Sorry, Jim, I should have sent you the presentation.
Where is it? You say on the three buttons when I hover over him, correct? Right click.
I believe so.
Yeah.
We might have had to make the person the host the
The
last time we
co-host,
tried
yeah.
to do this.
Yeah, I've always made the person the co-host that. I think that's the easy way out, Brian, but it does work.
Yep.
I
You're all set, Joe.
So say I could send it to you.
You can share your screen now, Joe, I think.
What does everybody see? Because this took over my full screen. I apologize.
We don't see anything shared yet.
All right, 1 second.
Now you're getting there.
All right, there it is. I can see it. Thanks, Joe.
So Frank, you just let me know when you want to switch. I'll just keep it like this so I don't mess it up and make it so you can't view it.
Okay, no problem. Thank you. We pretty much have the same committee as we've had the last couple of years. Last year, we added Jeffrey Genta as an associate member for a little bit more input. But we still, Dan, David, Philip, and Tracy, and myself, been around for a couple of years. Go ahead, Joe, next slide. An overview of the process. Each fall, the town departments submit the requests to Joe Conway, the CPC for consideration. Requests compiled into a spreadsheet for evaluation and review. Initial tax request this year was over $6.5 million. The water was at 250,000 and sewer was at 170,000. The CPC invites all interested department heads to a meeting for discussion on their requests to make their case. The CPC evaluates requests and establishes a rank and prioritization for the funding. We work to explore all potential options for efficiency and overall savings. And the CPC establishes a yearly plan to meet the town budget expense of around $2 million a year. Go ahead, the next one, Joe. This year, to highlight just a couple of the items this year, the police are going to get the 3 cruisers again. We've always tried to make sure they get 3 cruisers every year. Last year, we had to cut, we got the budget in half. We actually thought we were going to get the second half in November, so we only gave him 1 cruiser last year. And luckily this year, he came back and he said it wasn't a bad year and he can go with just the 3. So obviously we're going to give him all 3 of those. A new sidewalk, plow, snow blower, however you want to term it, for the schools, mainly for the Galvin, because of all the walkways and sidewalks associated with that area and the fields and everything. It's a lot, and with the third-party guys getting in there, so they have the bigger machines, and it's better to have a small machine like this and do it more efficiently. There's a Toro gang mower. It's a pretty pricey one, but this is the big gun of the fleet for Joe and his guys. This one does all the big fields, all the commons, all the anything that's big, and it's working 7 days a week in the summer, barring obviously the rain days. Next slide, Joe. This year we got the Hartshorn house roof, which needs replacement. The $50,000 seems a little high on that, but that's because it's got the wood shingles on there, and they're special. It takes more time, and it's a more special type of roof to put on. The boiler replacement at the senior center, they actually have 4 boilers right now, and all of them aren't working. So to replace them and make it a more efficient in the senior center, 2 new units will be able to handle the load for that entire building and replace the 4. The window, we need some money for some window replacements at the Greenwood Fire Station. Every year we try to do a couple updates there to get that out of the dark ages. Last year we actually had funds to get them a new boiler. So some new windows will probably keep the heat in for that new boiler. Next slide, Joe. $150,000 for the town-wide ADA accessibility and transition plan. 62,500 for fire department portable radios. They actually asked for to replace all of them last year, which was about $125,000, but obviously we gave them half because of the budget. We had to cut our budget in half last year, so we definitely wanted to get them the second half of those radios for this year. They told us the lifespan on these radios should be up to 10 years, so they should be good for a while, and we made sure that next time they don't wait till they're all down before, most of them are down before they come to us, and maybe try to do it in a little more, do a little bit at a time. The Woodville Playground was on the plan last year, but got cut because of the budget, and we definitely wanted to have it on there this year. And as we've been saying for the last couple of years, we want to try and get a new playground on each capital budget each year. Not last year, but 2 years ago, we had the Greenwood, and that Greenwood got finished last year. So we have the Woodville now, and each year, if we get them to between 100 and 200,000, depending upon what strings Joe can pull to get the best price and to get the work done. I think we should be able to handle that, given our current budget. Next one, Joe. So our recommended appropriation to the town is going to be a tax levy of $1,982,325,019. The 19 cents is actually carried over from prior leases from the prior year. So that's where the 19 cents comes in. The water enterprise is at 250,000 and the sewer enterprise is at 170,000. And Joe Birch is not here to make any comments, right?
No, he's not.
No. Okay. Anybody have any questions?
Yes, Gerard has a first question.
Thanks, Jim. Hey, Frank, Joe, just a curiosity on the Hartshorn House. Hadn't really thought of that one. I know it's, obviously a publicly owned place, but they do revenue generating events, probably not a COVID sensitive question, but I'm just curious, like, do any of the costs that we incur for big ticket items like this, are they offset at all by those kinds of the rental income or event income? I know you'd have to sell a lot of ice cream tickets to cover a roof. Not insensitive to the math here, but just as a general matter, maybe it's to Steve or Kevin, I don't know, but I was just curious about that one.
I can probably talk to that. And Joe, you want to stop sharing your screen because who knows what pop up. It is lovely.
I don't see it.
I think you just want to stop screen sharing because we're seeing your fishing pole and the water. It looks great.
That's where I want to be. I don't have the option to stop sharing. I apologize. So
okay.
That's interesting. I think Jim, you might have to take it away from me.
Yep, stand by.
To answer Gerard's question, in any event, Gerard, kind of like the Civic Center, I have the same philosophy here, is that it is a town-owned building, it's a town asset. They do make some money, not a lot, and that's been to cover a $50,000 roof, they'll never make that much money. And there's only so many ice cream socials, and the wear and tear there, and the things that they do from things in the garden and what have you. It would never make that. I'd love it if I could, but in this case, it doesn't work.
Understood.
Very good. Amy. Nope, sorry. Yep.
Sorry. So I just wanted to say I'm actually on the Hartshorn House Association board, and we obviously talked a lot about the roof, and we've not had any rental income this year, in this last year, obviously, because we haven't been able to have anyone in the house, and we do a lot of upkeep on the house. So the roof is a big item, and as Steve said, we probably would not make that money in ice cream ticket sales, but we have done a lot of work inside with just keeping it updated, keeping the electric safe, and all those sorts of fun things.
Very good. Thank you. Anybody have any other, excuse me, questions, comments on the Capitol? Frank or Joe, would you mind just sending me the final list that's going to be going to town meeting, and I'll get that out to the rest of the board, the actual, final approved items.
Yep, I'll get it to you right now.
Thank you. All right, I see no other hands, no other comments. Frank, thanks for joining us. The tie looks good on you. Well done.
Thanks, buddy. Thanks for letting me go. Take care, everybody.
Thank you, Frank.
Bye-bye.
All right, good. I know the schools has joined us. Thank you all. We'll be with you shortly as well. Cablevision, I think there's somebody on for Cablevision. We want to do that, Steve?
Sure. I think Kevin will start there. That should be a quick one.
I like that.
And Paul's on.
Kevin, you're muted.
Here we go. The cable TV public access, this budget is being decreased $25,881 over the current year. This was a new budget this fiscal year due to a requirement from the Mass Department of Revenue. This budget is funded through receipts from our cable providers, which are Verizon, Comcast, and RCN. This budget is broken down into 3 sections: personal services. For fiscal 22, that amount is $158,533. And this is used for salaries at the Wakefield High School for 2 teachers in the media department. The contractual services amount of $367,706 is used for a direct payment to WCAT, which is a 503C that was set up to provide public access to the town. And then we have the capital line item of $25,000, which is split 1/3 for the Wakefield Public Schools and 2/3 for WCAT. And that's based on the number of channels that each is in charge of. The total budget request for fiscal 2022 is $551,239. I do want to say that we have Paul Norman on the line with us tonight if there were any specific questions with regards to WCAT.
Paul, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. If I could just mention, as Kevin mentioned, we are seeing another decrease in the franchise fees that the town receives as more subscribers from cable TV are going to streaming services. Unfortunately, you'll see that we also did not achieve the estimated revenues that were in the last enterprise budget that was passed last year. So we're running behind. And this is happening at a time where WCAT services have been in incredible demand. As you know, we're doing all the Wakefield Town Committee meetings, many more sports broadcasts than we've ever done, and we're facing declining revenues. So we're struggling to stay break even. As you may know, when Tom Stapleton retired and Ryan Boyd became executive director, that position was not replaced. That was to be fiscally conservative. And so we're happy to continue to provide services, but we are just about maxed out on our capacity. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that the committee has about WCAT as I'm the treasurer.
Very good. Thank you for that, for those comments. Dan Sherman, you have a question?
Yeah, this would have been probably a pretty easy one, but I just happened to notice under the capital, the budget's 25,000 and the actual spend is exactly 25,000. I don't think I've ever seen that before. So I imagine there's a good reason for it.
Yes, WCAT, that money gets, once that money comes in, it goes directly to WCAT. So we cut a check to them for that amount. Same thing for the schools.
So there's no reconciliation.
Right.
No reconciliation. Okay, got it. Thank you, Kevin.
Well, that's also a contractually obligated capital payment. So it's one of the easiest ones to predict. It's in a contract. The contracts don't expire. Although we are facing a Verizon contract renewal in May of this year, but those capital dollars are contractually obligated, whereas the other revenues are a percentage of cable subscriber fees.
Very good. Thank you. Now, Kevin, this was in a different budget in prior years, and then the state made a requirement for this, correct? Is that what you said?
Right, that it was basically set up in a revolving account. The monies would come in and they would go directly to the schools in WCAT. The Department of Revenue wanted more accounting for it, so the requirement was when the monies came in, we basically set it up as an enterprise account. The monies would come in, they would be appropriated at town meeting as a budget, similar to what we do for water and sewer.
All right, thank you. And I just say with, you know, the less subscribers, you know, there's going to need to be, you know, some sort of change at some point. I can tell you in my microeconomics world, my 20-something-year-olds all use my sharing account and don't even have their own, let alone Cablevision. So it's fair to say that, you know, the 20-something-year-olds aren't going to be looking for wires coming to their houses, at least in some cases. So it's going to be a challenging thing going forward. So
I think it is something we're going to have the forecasting committee look at, because it does provide a great service, particularly during the pandemic.
yeah, no, there's no doubt about it. The benefits that each community is able to, you know, to glean from it has been great. So, all right, any other comments, questions? Okay, Paul, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Good. Take care.
Good night.
Too. Okay. Is there anybody else, outsiders here, other than the schools, Steve, that I didn't call upon?
I think that we're good. I think the schools, and unless you want to let Kevin and me go early, which I doubt.
No. All right, so the schools, as they said, they'll be joining us a little bit. So Amy is chair of the school committee now, and we have Doug and Christine, who is the business agent manager. And then Tom Markham is on the finance subcommittee, I believe, Doug. I don't know if I got that right or not.
You have it right, Jim. Spot on.
Okay. So you folks are up, and I appreciate you, you know, working things out with us. What can I do for you? You want to share, or do you have a presentation? Do you want, we looked at it last time.
We have the slides that we shared last time. We can give an update in terms of where we are with the budget, whatever works best for the committee, Jim.
I think the update would be good. The slides we had, and I'd go that route.
Okay. So I'll give you a very brief update. And so the school committee revisited the budget. There were several questions that we answered. A lot of new questions around learning loss and around social emotional learning, and around, you know, how do you quantify that? And are we prepared for students to come back, not only in the spring, but also in the summer and the fall? And there were a lot of questions that we discussed in our last meeting around the need for social emotional supports and counseling. And so we discussed that at length. We feel like we brought on a number of new counselors in the past couple of years. So, you know, we need to get back to understand what kids need before we start, you know, budgeting ahead of time. And so one of the things that we think is in keeping with the philosophy of, you know, budgeting for the knowns. And so when we get kids back, if kids need more, we need to kind of think that through and how we might address that. But we feel like with the budget that we proposed to school committee, it's a 4.88% increase. The new kind of number that we're working with is $45,703,200. And so that is the new budget that we are working with, that was accepted by the school committee, that we think really meets the needs of students. And it's we're budgeting for what is known for the fall. And so I should say we're budgeting for what is known as of July 1, and not just the fall. And so because we will be providing summer services for students, not only in regard to special education, but also in regard to math and literacy as well. And so we're looking at applying for some grants with the Department of Ed to accelerate learning and to also kind of address some different needs of kids. But those grants have yet to be published. They were just discussed last week with the Commissioner of Education. So that is a very quick update in terms of where we're at. I'll be happy to answer any questions that anybody has.
Very good. Before we go to the questions, Steve had put together some info on the school budget in particular that I shared with the rest of the board, that the positions that were associated with the needs for remote learning, et cetera, that amount of money was going to be picked up with the COVID federal money, Steve, which was helping give a slight offset to the budget. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's what I would suggest, the same philosophy that we used in positions at the police department, town hall greeters, and what have you. So although the entire budget is 45,703, we would anticipate and strongly anticipate, and probably 99.9999% believe we're going to get a lot of federal money, and we would charge that back to that account for a couple of reasons. And the other item is, and thinking about this, when we did it in our town-wide, some of the other town accounts, I think we did it police and health, was a health nurse too. I'm always worried about if the federal government says you budgeted something on your own and then you didn't offset it by money you thought we're going to give you. You must have thought you could pay it, so now you don't need the money. So I've kind of been burned a couple of times over the years by the federal government. So that's kind of another, belts and suspenders sort of thing. I've been on a number of webinars about the American Rescue Plan, which is where this money is coming from, or would come from, in my opinion. Town of Wakefield is slated to get a sizable amount of money in there that we certainly could slide 360,000 easily into that. And that money is outside of these buckets of ESSER money or federal education money that's coming in, or education money that's coming in too via the state. So I'm, 100%, 99.9 confident that we're going to get this. If for some reason we didn't, and you never know until you have it in your hand, and Kevin and I talk about that all the time. Hey, if we had to go back and say, hey guys, this wasn't covered for the town or for the school, we would have to dip into our own free cash account to do it. But I don't see that coming. So I think that offsetting this, helps us out on the tax levy side, helps us out on our free cash certification on July 1st, and certainly makes the school department whole. And I think there'll be more money to follow, so that's just my 2 cents on that.
Yep. Great, appreciate it. I will open it up at that point for questions from the rest of the board.
Jim, do you mind if I give just the briefest of
Yes,
overview?
I'm sorry.
So as a reminder.
Please.
Thanks. So just because Doug and the school committee had joined last time, I don't want to rehash everything, but just a few reminders that I thought would provide some context. Obviously, what's different now is you guys have had a chance to read the PowerPoint deck and the full book that are circulated at the time of our last meeting. So of course you'll have new questions, but just a couple of preemptive points. Remember that this budget was set with return to school in mind. So it's not that there were buffers for different contingencies, but Doug will correct me if I'm wrong. We're going to town meeting with a budget that contemplates, return to school, basically full return to school. So that's where some of these numbers are driven from. The revenue sources that are often discussed on page 13 of our book were impacted by an inability to either rent our facilities, revenue from meal services and things like that. There was some cost give back on the athletic transportation. So that's where COVID led to a little savings reduction, but a cost reduction. But otherwise, revenue in general was a net decline. So that's one of the contributors. And then, as we discussed, Doug Butler raised the point last time. Well, how durable or necessary are some of the EHS or environmental health and safety type concerns and investments we're making? I think we're planning to at least having to do those in the foreseeable next year period, probably longer. I think that was the subject of our discussion. The town council had a few of the same questions we've asked each other perennially and including this year. So are the COVID related custodial positions kind of bound by a year? I think Jonathan Shines asked that question. We asked that question a couple of weeks ago. And of course, Ed Dombrowski asked the same question we always ask, or observation. It really comes down to collective bargaining for this budget. The increase in personal services at about 5.5%, right? And so I think if you look at some of the contractual services and materials and supplies, that's at 0.9% and 3.8% respectively. Very reasonable numbers, especially in a pandemic response year for materials and supplies. So it continues to be that headline number. And the schools are trying. I characterized the last time as something of we have to keep an eye on the services, right? We got back to school it's sooner than comparable districts last year. So maintaining the ability for folks who are needing it to go remote, having the right resources in play for next school year was a priority for the schools. And of course, learning loss that I will defer to the administration, school committees, because they're the experts in this role. I think that's pretty much what I wanted to just refresh folks, realize you probably have your own questions. Doug or Amy, did I miss anything or mischaracterize anything you want to correct?
No, I think you've covered it well. Thank you.
Oh, I'll also do, but one other thing, I have a more full analysis to talk about. I have started to play with some of the DART data, the district analysis and review tool on the DESI website. So just as, and we talked this morning at their subcommittee meeting, there are myriad ways to parse those data based on certain demographic issues, the amount of high medical needs students and special needs students. There's a lot to do there. Tom, Amy, and Susie made reference to the fact that they do in fact look at those data on a pretty regular basis in the CBA process and in general. So we had a nice discussion today about that. So for our vote meeting, I'd like to show you a little bit more comprehensively what I'm doing there. But really, if you look at us against certain benchmarks, and we talked about the DART defaults in DESI versus the SEAM Collaborative versus Middlesex League schools, we'll have to triangulate it, right? And look at all those data for comparable analyses. So I'm hoping to provide that to you for our vote night. I don't have it for you because I'm a week behind, admittedly. So I just wanted to throw that in. That took a material portion of our conversation today. So some more due diligence forthcoming. But that, I promise that's it for me. Thanks, Jim.
Very good. Thank you. And I had talked to Christine and just took the liberty in my email to point you to some of the pages in the book that might be beneficial or might have been beneficial. It's a good sized book, a lot of wealth of information. And so that was just my idea to come up in the past, and Christine was able to help. And I thought it helped guide me a little better. There's a lot of information in the book. So I will open up for questions. And Dan, you have your hand up. Dan, you're on mute also.
Thanks. Sorry about that, Jim. So I'm a little bit confused about some of the numbers. I have, and maybe Kevin's the one to answer this, but on looking at the materials and supplies, for 22, it's at 7,480,000. And then for the previous year or current year, 21, you have 7,931,000. So it looks like a very large increase. And if I look at the personal services portion, it's like over a 6.2% increase, not the 5.2 that Gerard had just mentioned. So I got a little disconnect here, and I'm wondering if Kevin, you can help me out in terms of understanding why it's 6.2 versus the 5.2 that Gerard said, and why the large decrease in contractual services.
So, yeah. Not to pick you, Dan. I think I said 5.5, but your larger point stands, of course. Yeah. And Dan, did you say you have 7 million in materials and supplies?
Yeah, according, I'm looking at Kevin's, the spreadsheet you just sent out, Jim, and it shows the budget compared from 21 to 22. And
that's the town council to date budget.
Yeah, that one. Yep.
So that's the summary budget that I send out. It's one spreadsheet that shows, all the budgets that have been presented to date. Down on the, towards the bottom, the 322 of the town council, that line item, I
Right,
presume.
that one.
Yep.
So it's 7.9 million in column H, which is everything except personal services. And then
Right.
it's become 7.48 in column L for 22. So it's like a $450,000 decrease, and personal services goes up 6.2. So I'm a little confused.
Yeah, I'm reacting to page 5. I'm pulling from page 5 of the budget presentation. I don't know where that number comes from.
Kevin?
Yes. From the budget last year, where the school's a bottom line budget, they're anticipated, I asked for an anticipated breakdown to put in the budget book for town meeting, on what the anticipated breakdown is. And that was the anticipated breakdown for fiscal 21 is what I put on my spreadsheet, because that is what actually got voted at town meeting. But that does not necessarily mean where the school's a bottom line budget. They have the ability to move funds around. So if under contractual services, they found it beneficial or cheaper to hire someone than contract something out, they have the ability to do that.
Okay, so the personal services at 6.2% increase. If I then include, and that doesn't include roughly 360,000 for the 6 new positions. If I include those, the personal services budget portion goes up 7.22%. And so, I think Steve is correct. We should treat the Fed money like we do for other budgets,
Yeah.
and use it as a credit, because a 7.22% increase in personal services, that's gonna be a problem, especially this year, and even more so going forward. A little bit later, we'll talk about my forecast, but this 488 is a budget buster, and you'll see that.
Right, but the numbers you're speaking of are all 488 net, correct? In just different places?
No, that's 488 gross if we assume that the federal money is a credit, and then so tax levy would go up a little over 4%. Their budget goes up 488.
So Kevin, can I just chime in a little bit? So at the end of last fiscal 20, we were in 61 days of closure for COVID. So what happened at the end of fiscal 20, school committee approved budget transfers to, because we had to buy PPE, we had to do facilities updates. So we moved money between lines for the bottom line out of salary lines that for things that stopped, extracurricular, academic services, tutoring, things that didn't happen during the closure. So they were moved to contractual services. So it's not like we didn't have those positions last year and then we're hiring for this year. They were moved because of COVID for last year. So we could balance the budget for fiscal 20. And that usually happens every year for school committee. I usually present around probably the first meeting in July, some budget transfers to sort of reconcile all the accounts as the year goes along.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. I'm fine with that. I just wanted to reconcile the 7.9 versus your figure for 21. As I understand, the school can move the money around, but what I'm trying to keep track of is town meeting votes and town meeting presentation, which is a different animal.
I understand. Thank you.
Any other questions to the team? Okay. Doug Butler, you're awake, right?
Yes, I'm awake.
Thank you for not having any questions. That's fine.
Well, we'll see.
Okay,
Dennis has his hand raised, Jim.
thank you. Sorry, Dennis?
How many total employees do we have? We don't have a listing of all your employees like the other departments give us. I've requested it, but I guess we don't get them from you. So how many total employees do we have this year versus last year as funded, not as employed because of COVID?
Currently, we have, Dennis, we have 578 employees. And currently we have 16 employees employed because of COVID that are managing our remote services.
Okay.
Right? Thank you. No other questions?
That's not what either.
Oh, for God's sakes, why did I ask you? Go ahead, Doug.
No, I actually don't have, it's not actually that many sort of pressing questions. And I'm not, I'm not gonna, Gerard and Dan can handle the the logistics of what we account for COVID and all that. And you're not, I guess my question is more, how are we thinking about enrollment going into next year? Because I imagine we had a big drop off or somewhat of a drop off this year as more people sent their kids to go full time someplace, most likely parochial school, but also some going private. Do you think you're going to get a large portion of those sort of the elementary school kids back, and or do you think we're going to lose a ton? Are we going to lose more than than normal for high school? And how do you factor that in?
Well, there's a few questions there, right? And so,
of course, you know me.
I do, Doug. And so across the state, there's anywhere between 3.5% to 11% enrollment swings due to COVID. So some districts have as many as 11% of their enrollment is down. Districts like us are down, 3-4%. And so we're anticipating that the students that have enrolled in parochial schools, students that are homeschooling, will be returning to the Wakefield Public Schools. And so there, in regard to your question about the high school, that's a separate, there's a drop off, and we have had a drop off for the past number of years in students that are leaving Galvin in grade 8 and coming to the high school. We've lost about 60 students that end up going to private high school, 9 through 12. And so we're anticipating to get some of those students back as well because of the economy. And we're also looking to a new high school and really starting to retain greater numbers from the middle school, which we plan on seeing as well, Doug. So that's kind of a near answer, like in regard to time.
Did we see that for the middle school? Did we see that we lost a lot less from, I guess, 6th to 7th normally would be when you'd lose them?
We did. And so we talked to MSBA about this when we did our enrollment study. And Steve can speak to this as well, as, MSBA says, if you build it, they'll come. Right. And so Essex Tech saw an enormous increase in enrollment. Vocational schools, when they build new schools, their enrollment increases. And when towns build new high schools, their enrollment numbers increase as well. So there are layers to this. So there's the new high school, but then there's the return to COVID. And in terms of budget, the question that often gets asked is, how does that affect our Chapter 70? Because Chapter 70 is based on enrollment. And right now, our legislators and the Mass Association of School Superintendents, our retired superintendent, Mary Burke, who's a former colleague of mine, they're working at the State House right now to try to correct enrollment numbers earlier in the year than October 1, which is when we record numbers, to increase our Chapter 70. So there'll be more information forthcoming on that as well.
And I know it's not your ball of wax, and I know the vote was on earlier, but if they're new and we're new roughly within a year or two of each other, is that gonna hurt your enrollment if now all of a sudden our voc is competitive with Essex or one of those?
No, because they draw from different schools, different populations, different audiences, right? And so the Vogue draws from different communities.
Yeah.
So I think I think it's going to help us actually. You know, I do think the Vogue is going to get an increased number of applicants, but their footprint isn't changing so radically that they're not going to be able to accommodate all the kids. What's going to happen is what happened at Essex Tech. It's going to become a more selective process for admission is really what it amounts to.
Oh, are they turning people away now?
They are the Vogue or Essex?
The Vogue.
I don't know. It depends on your community.
Yeah.
I know applying from Chelsea is different than applying from Reading, different than applying from Wakefield. So because Wakefield and Reading send so few kids, the majority of those kids get in. But if you're from, you know, Chelsea, I know the numbers are much higher and kind of the acceptance rates are much lower.
Okay.
And I did have a question. What is the what you would call it, cost per pupil? What is it? What does it come out to? You have benchmarks associated with that? You know, student learning cost or overall cost or something that the state looks at.
We do have a per pupil expenditure. Christine might be able to pull that number more quickly than I can.
It's on the DESE website. It hovers around 13,000 per student. But as Gerard found out, I mean, you can dig deep and because we have to file every year the end of year report. It's an all funds, sort of a balance sheet, a revenue sheet for all streams of revenue and expenditures per year. It gets audited. And then what DESE does is they take that data and they put it on their website so communities can go in and do comparative analysis based on demographics, economic factors of how your community is doing compared to comparable districts.
Jim, our per pupil expenditure in 19 was $16,245, so $16,245 per student per year.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other comments from questions from the board? Okay. Very good. I thank you for joining us. I would echo what town councilor said the other night about you know, collective bargaining and the staff. As you know, how your budget is made up. It's we continue to balance, evaluate, and try to fund for additional staff, you know, across the portfolio. And, you know, it's all about trying to be sustainable as words you use. So appreciate it and keep it up. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, before you let the school department go, they have an article,
Sorry, yep.
School supplement budget.
Right, so on the articles, are you guys prepared for that one? Or is Kevin involved in that one, or?
So are you referring to transportation or stabilization, Steve?
The sped stabilization.
Yeah, so we will be prepared for that.
Right, I think the amount is, you're looking at 230,000 out of sped stabilization for outplacements, correct?
Okay, the sped amount is about 230?
Yes.
Great. Okay. And then we'd have to consider putting money back in there in the fall, Steve, is that correct?
I would, yeah, I think that in the fall, we'll have a clearer picture. Maybe we'll have, you know, we'll have the federal funds in hand.
Right.
That's what I would do. I would look at doing that either the fall or in the next spring. It's a great account that we have. I mean, it really has worked out well, and that's been our MO. We've tapped it a few times and then replenished it, so it's worked out well.
Jim, at the risk of jumping in, can I ask Kevin real quick? So Kevin, on the article sheet, it says 300,000. Was that just a placeholder? It says you need to check the number. Is that to be updated to the 230 by town meeting? Is that the idea? I'd love to hear your voice, but you're on mute.
That's correct. That was a preliminary number.
Roger that.
Um,
All right.
I verified it and confirmed with Christine today that it was actually 230,000 that they'll be looking for.
Thanks, Kevin.
Welcome. Are the new hands up or Dan, did you have your hand up or Doug?
Yep,
Dan
I
first?
do.
Yep.
I do. So on the sped, Kevin, I think the last time I asked you about this, I think the balance of that's a roughly 560,000. Is that my
Yeah, it
right
was
ballpark?
It was over 500,000. It was like 510,000 or.
510.
The last
So-
meeting, in your last meeting, Dan, I think you said it was 540.
Yeah, that might be right. So, so 230 gives us, yeah, just a little less, a little over 300,000. I'm curious in terms of the drivers for the 230. Can you tell us a little bit about what drove the excess amount this particular year?
Yes, they were for out of district tuitions that were not budgeted for, right? And so we had students that needed to go out of district that needed extensive service. And we had to accommodate those students. So that's singular.
3 or 4 or 5, 6. Any idea how many?
So it's 2 students.
2 students, 230. Wow.
Yep.
Wow. Okay, thank you.
So
Doug? Sorry, Doug Lyons, go ahead.
no, I was just going to say, Dan said, wow, I think, it's an important piece of data because it lets us know, complex special ed needs. We always try to keep students in district. It's a question that always comes up. Do we look at, building programs and keeping students in district? And the answer is always, right? But when students can't stay in district because their disabilities are so complex or their needs are so complex that we can't meet those needs, that when they do need to go out, often the cost is significant. But, and I think what Steve said is important. I think Steve said it is this idea of, thank goodness we have the stabilization fund. I've been particularly pleased that we haven't needed to access it for the last few years. And, if we didn't have it, I think we would really be in a tough spot. But the fact that it was created, the fact that it was also down and it was refunded a couple years back, and the fact that those things happened, I think were brilliant. I think it sets us apart from other towns and puts us in a space that makes us considerably more able to serve children and also meet the needs of kids and families. So thank you is what I'm saying, I guess.
Yeah. Yes, very good. I heard that. Thank you. Doug Butler. Doug.
Yeah, sorry, I probably was inadvertent with my hand there, but I would say this in terms of, I think, the per pupil spending that people were talking about. We're like 245th in the state out of 350. So we're pretty low down on the per pupil spend. So before people start getting up in arms about that, we're relatively frugal, even though some of our neighbors spend a little less. And, I think that's, in some ways it's like, oh, if we spent more, would we get better results? And I don't know the answer to that. But that's, COVID or no COVID, that's my big thing around the schools is like, let's not get sidetracked by like cleaning and the other, stuff y'all have had to deal with in the last couple of months. But really focusing on education. And, I think y'all are doing the right things there.
Thank you.
Great. Appreciate it. Thanks for the observation, Doug. Steve, I think that's it for the schools.
Yes, that's all I have.
All right, again, thank you all for joining us. I've seen a lot of you in the last few weeks, so talk soon. Thanks again.
Take care. Good night. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good night, all. Thank you.
Good night. See you, Tom. Okay, last budget looks like health insurance to be covered. Kevin, Steve?
Kevin can start, yep.
Yep, group insurance budget We're requesting an increase of $638,987 over the current fiscal year. The tax levy portion is being increased $523,083. Of that, $10,753 is in the personal services line item, which is for contractual and negotiated increases. We did decrease the town's tax levy portion $200,000 overall, based on what we anticipate as a surplus this fiscal year. In this budget, we're anticipating approximately $500,000 being returned. So we didn't have to go up as much overall for next year. The increase in the transfers from the enterprise funds increase that was a total of $115,904. I do want to point out that the group insurance budget does include $1,675,000 as the town's contribution to the town's OPEB fund. I'm sorry, yes, the town's OPEB fund. At the end of last fiscal year, the balance in that account was $18.4 million. The total budget request for fiscal 2022 is $14,284,954.
All right, thank you. Do the subcommittee have comments?
So the subcommittee reviewed these budgets. So I think as Steve has pointed out, until enrollment occurs, the numbers won't be final. But I think, this year they anticipate returning a significant amount of about 500,000. And we're looking to lower by 200,000 next year. The one thing, and Kevin wasn't with us at our meeting, so there was, and Dan pointed this out, there was some concern about the administrative expenses and the allocation of those administrative expenses between the enterprise funds and the tax levy. So, and I think if you look at it, there is no administrative cost to the tax levy, and all the administrative costs are built into the enterprise funds. And I think we were just concerned whether, there's a rationale for that, and if it's appropriate that this be on a ratio basis, or whether there's a reason behind those allocations.
And Dawn, where do you see that on the spreadsheet, or is it on the spreadsheet? Sorry.
So it is on the spreadsheet. It's the appropriation of the human resources budget, personnel services,
You can see
administrative
on
costs.
page 2. Look at page 2 of on the tab.
Thank you. Yep. All right, any comments then? Did you, from Steve or Kevin, or did you have any feedback from that, Don, from those questions or observations?
I think Kevin does. Kevin has some.
Yeah, I spoke with Dan, gave him the rationale for the chargebacks where it's absorbed in the tax levy, and the indirect costs, how they are shifted between the enterprise accounts and the town budgets. The vast majority of it is transferred over to the IT department. Instead of having small transfers to various departments, we basically lumped it all together and decided to offset the vast majority to the IT department. I'm not sure if you recall, on the salary page on the IT budget, there is an enterprise reduction in their personal services line item of, I think it's like $180,000 thereabouts. But I went over with those with Dan actually the other day, and I think Dan was comfortable with the methodology used.
Actually, Kevin, it was this morning. That's
No,
okay.
this morning, it was very early this morning then.
It was very early. Yeah, I think I understand what he's trying to do and make it work, because there's so many different departments, and trying to charge back all of them separately is an administrative nightmare. So Kevin took the easy way out, the straightforward way though, because at the bottom line, it works. And it's something that if the DOR comes in and says, that's what jumped out to me is you got a 0 for tax levy and you got enterprise accounts paying administrative costs. And on the DOR rules, you have to have a legitimate way of allocating those kind of costs across, the various departments and so forth. And my concern was this didn't look like a legitimate way on its surface, but diving into it, it sort of makes sense. So as long as the DOR is happy, I'm happy.
Very good. Don, anything else?
No, that was it. So,
Good. Open up for questions from the board.
It's
My
very
one question. Yep, go ahead, Steve.
No, go ahead, Jim. I'll answer your question.
Yep. So you think you have a $500,000 return, reducing the budget by 200. So what's the rationale on that?
Well, rationale on that is, we took we have 500,000 to return this year because open enrollment often occurs after we've set the budget. And our team in the health insurance department has done a great job of migrating people from higher plans within the GIC to lower premium plans. And what happens is, one plan is a broad network plan. One is a more narrow network plan. If all of their doctors are in the narrow network plan, it saves the employee premium dollars and saves the town premium dollars. So they go through that analysis with everybody. The other item is that when you look at our health insurance breakdown, about 50% of the subscribers are active employees and 50% are retirees, which is a real interesting mix here in Wakefield. It's not that way in every community. And unfortunately, some of our retirees, as they get older, during the plan year, they pass away. So if they pass away, there's no longer an insurance premium being paid out by the town. So those things those two items there, and people opt out when things change. People get, maybe their kids become emancipated, being 26 years older. Maybe they switch from a family plan then to individual plans that people do to save money. So all those things happen during the year that we don't necessarily know about right now. So this year we anticipate $500,000 coming back on this budget. And that's been consistent the last few years because of our migrating people over. And I anticipate they will migrate people over over the next month or so, which is the open enrollment period, or starting in beginning of April. So I'm very confident that this is going to be easily hit. And I think they'll still return money. So.
Anybody else? Dan, your hand up?
Yeah, I'm just going to piggyback on that a little bit. A couple of things. Don and I received a breakdown by each of the various plans and a number of people in each of the plans. And I think one of the points that should be making is that the people who are over 65 have to get into Medicare. And the Medicare cost of the various plans year to year has been very low. The coming year, that's looking at about 2.3% increase. For the indemnity plans, the HMOs, the PPOs, the number's a little bit higher, 4, 5, 6, 8%. But over the last several years, on average, our healthcare cost for actives and retirees has been closer to 3.5%, 3%, 2.5%, and something like that. It's been really good. And for those on this committee who remember 10 years ago, we were in Maya. And Steve provided me a beautiful little PowerPoint today regarding the Maya costs. So some of you remember we saved over $3 million, I think $3.5 million when we got out of Maya and went to the GIC. If you take our costs now for a typical HMO PPO plan and compare it to the Maya cost 10 years ago, we're actually lower today. In other words, with all our inflation, we're still less than the cost of the Maya plans from 10 years ago. So, that was a absolutely great move that we made. Saved us many, many millions of dollars, probably 25 or $30 million over that 10-year period. So on the healthcare side, it's nothing but a good story, and hopefully it'll continue that way.
And I got to thank the FinCom for working together with us, Kevin and I. I think we even got OPEB buttons at one point in the beginning. And that was quite a feat to say, we're going to put $1.5 million, $1.6 million, $1.675 million this year out of the operations, basically, to fund an unfunded liability. And what did Kevin say? 18.5 million now? We'll be over 20 million after we make this funding.
Dan, you're on mute, Dan.
Sorry. Based on the prim and returns, I bet we're over $20 million today.
Great, good story. And like you said, the GIC continues to pay benefits. So, all right, I don't see any other hands on health insurance. I think that completes the budget look, Steve. And
Yes.
then we had, pardon?
Yes, I think we just have a few articles left.
Right. I had townwide supplemental and debt services and obviously indemnification.
Right.
But
Okay, Kevin, you want to start and I'll jump in?
We'll start with the indemnification.
Sure.
On the indemnification budget, we're going to be looking for $100,000. Right now, we are in the hole, approximately $65,000 in this account. We have one employee, public safety employee, who's receiving treatment for what's considered an on-the-job injury. And projecting that out through the end of the fiscal year, we'll need $100,000 to cover that account. And that money will be coming out of free cash.
And that's because those costs are not put into our workers' comp budget, as you guys know.
Okay. Got it. Any comments on that? Thank you. You want debt services?
The next one will be the town supplemental.
Yep.
Steve and I talked about the supplemental today. This will be funded out of free cash also. The amount that we talked about was $309,320. It's made up of 4 items. The first being a supplemental of $150,000 for the DPW for tree damage. When the DPW was in doing their budget, we talked about the August storm that we had, that mini tornado that took down a lot of trees. Working with Joe on coming up with a figure, it was just south of 200,000 that they spent on that storm, but he thinks he'll be able to make it through the year. He'll be able to cover a portion of it, but not the full amount. So he'll be looking for 150,000 to balance out his budget through the end of the fiscal year. The next item under the legal budget, the legal settlement that we finalized on Butler Ave. We had legal bills totaling about $65,000 that we can cover a portion of it, but we're going to be short about $50,000 in that budget. So we'll be looking for $50,000 to cover those costs. The next item would be $66,320 for the vocational school budget. The Essex North budget, we had anticipated 6 students being at Essex North. When the school bell rang at the beginning of the year, 9 students actually attended Essex North. So there were 3 additional students at Essex North. That totaled $60,320. And the other $6,000 was a capital fee that Minuteman is now charging for the 1 student that is attending Minuteman. And the last item, workers' comp budget. We're going to be short $43,000 in that budget. We spoke about that when John Spinella was in to present that budget. And that's the total those total $309,320, again, which would be funded through free cash. And Steve and I spoke, could a portion of that maybe be funded through the reserve account? It could, but it would serve the same purpose. If we fund it here, we don't fund it out of the reserve account, everything gets closed to, at the end of the year to the general fund anyway. So it really doesn't matter where it gets funded. The only concern is that we still have 3 months left in the year. If a boiler blows up and we need money to cover that, we'd have it in the reserve fund. And if we took it out of the free cash right now.
All right, thank you. Questions, comments? Brian, was your hand up? Okay. Yep, Gerard?
Hey, Steve, just having watched the town council meeting, the folks over here on Broadway and Plymouth and all that whole area, the folks who called in during public participation, I think I know the answer to this, but they seem to make some pretty acute accusations. I'm presuming that they don't have an action under law or some kind of lawsuit out there that it seems to be
about tax abatements.
Well, that one in particular I thought was unique, but I any kind of legal exposure to the prolonged and perceived, I'm uniquely impacted by that one, so I empathize to a great degree. But I guess from a finance perspective, not something we expect to be tortable.
Yeah,
or
I would say absolutely not.
That's what I thought.
Again, that's the railroad track crossing, the Broadway crossing being closed, and the complaints to the town council. Got it. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks. Anybody else? All right. I don't see anyone. Great. Was there one more?
Last one is the debt service article, looking to fund $4,133,698 through the tax levy for next year. That is to pay for the town's projected debt service for next year, which includes the Galvin Middle School. There is also another $1 million that is not appropriated, that is transferred by town council into the debt service account. So in total, it will be $5,133,698 that will be going in, but we only appropriate the $4,133,698 through the tax levy.
Good. Questions on that? Yes, sir.
Yeah, Steve, on your last spreadsheet that you'd sent me, I have the debt service fund at just 2.6 million. A substantial difference here.
Yeah,
So-
but remember on my spreadsheet,
Isn't yours like isn't the 2.6 a net number? Because it offsets for MBA? Steve, you're frozen.
There was a movie called that once.
We lost Steve. Kevin, can you help? Can you bail him out here? Kevin is frozen.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh. Hey,
Looks like
Dennis.
a whole part of the town is gone frozen.
Dan, you sometimes have that effect on people.
Could be a finance committee coup going on here.
I think they're on the wrong side of the tracks.
Yeah, there
Apparently.
you go, Don. It's we all must have Comcast on that are remaining on the screen.
Actually, I have
That's
RCA.
affirmative. Well, you're up in Maine.
No,
Yeah.
well, yeah, true. I'm in Maine.
Yeah.
So I was on a call not too long ago, right? I paid for the 300. I was on the call. I got thrown off. I tested it. I had 29. You know, you pay for like 300 megabytes per second.
And you
or
get
whatever it is.
29.
I had 29 between the hours of like 7 and 10. So sometimes I'm in the kitchen right next to the router, and then I have to throw people out of there to make it go. But you pay for 300, I get 29 during certain times of the day. Go figure.
Oh, we got Kevin back.
Kevin's back.
He's on mute.
You're on mute.
I'm back. I don't know what happened. Same thing happened to Steve.
Yeah, I got knocked out as well.
Yeah.
You all on Verizon?
Yeah,
Verizon.
we're on Verizon.
We lost our quorum.
Oh, well, no GIC for us. We're going back to
You're out.
So Kevin,
Yes.
can you answer that until or you want to wait till Steve?
Oh, no. Oh, no.
I'm back.
He's back.
Oh, there he is.
Did you all bounce out or did just I?
Just the Verizon, just people who are on Verizon.
Okay, which I'm on. Wow. I was in the middle of saying, Dan, that did not include the debt exclusion.
Okay,
Yeah.
I knew there was a net
Yeah.
figure here, so 2.6 million is still the right number.
Yeah, I kind of the debt exclusion, I think of it covers it, and then, but 2.6 is the right number. Yeah.
Right, okay, very good, thank you.
I have the same panic every year when I look at it.
Why, yeah.
All right. Any final comments on the articles? Seeing none.
Did we cover the dollar?
I thought we did that when
Joe was here.
Joe
I
was
thought
here?
we did that when Joe was here for the DPW.
Yeah, not that it matters, but okay.
Yeah.
And I know we did the trash collection.
Yep. So that's it on this evening's agenda. I'll open it up for committee comments. I just have a couple of comments at the end. So anybody have any committee comments?
So Jim,
Jim, are you going to cover what you and I talked about?
I'm going to bring it up and you can jump right in. Yes.
Okay, very good. I'm all set.
Gerard, somebody else going to say something?
yeah, Jim, I just wanted to make one point, probably the subcommittee members for the schools first, but for everyone's general information. Oh, I keep getting kicked out. So because we did the schools tonight, which is different than our normal process, which would have been on voting night, I realized we can bring up under discussion the budget. So what I asked the schools to do this morning was to reserve one more opportunity for Brian, Bill, Jim, and I to meet with them together with that subcommittee. In case you all have questions you want to open up under discussion for the budgets under the voting period, right? When we do that meeting. So Jim, Brian, Bill, this is my way of saying, I guess we will meet one more time with them. Maybe we've answered everyone's questions. If so, great. But that'll give us, one last opportunity to maybe field this group's larger set of questions or whatnot. It's just because we're doing a little different this year. I thought we'd reserve that opportunity as well. So.
Terrific idea.
Yeah. Thank you, Bill. Brian.
I also spaced during the thing. Did we ever resolve what is being asked for in the school's budget? Is it the number minus the grant money that we think we're getting, or are they asking for the full amount and it's up to us to knock it off?
So they went to the school committee asking for that 488, right? So that's the number of record. That's the one they took to town council as well. I defer to Steve, of course, but that's what we talked about as early as today.
So then do we have to, I guess that's what I don't understand is like, if we vote them the 488 and then we get whatever it is, 400 grand in grant money, do we have to give them that money too?
So Steve, are you on?
Yeah, I'm on. My thought would be that when we do present that we show that 360,000, I think, whatever it is, as an offset, like I said tonight, that we credit it against the the total budget, because you're also going to put in the bus fees too, whatever that number is, has got to be put in there. They haven't mentioned that to us either. Usually that's 115. Are we holding serve with that, Kevin? Did Kevin
That's
jump
correct.
on? Correct.
Yes, it is 115.
You know, I would put those both in, just like we have done for years in the budget book, and show 360 as a federal reimbursement. That's what I would suggest. Now, they may have to go to their committee. They're still getting the 440, the full, what, 45,700, whatever that is. It's just 45. Yeah, it's just been taken out of different buckets.
Yeah, I guess that's my thing, is I don't want to short them on it and then not have it. Like, if we don't get it, I think we still owe it to them to do the full amount.
Oh, I agree, but we're gonna get it.
Yeah, I'm not arguing with you there. I'm just saying that, like, you know, I don't know what we vote on. That's what I was saying. I don't know.
Yeah.
So like, you guys can figure that out.
I think you would want to vote on the lower amount, that you'd want the tax levy amount to be offset by that amount.
Okay.
And when that money comes in, it would be, the expense would be transferred over to the COVID account where that money.
And if
would
it
go.
doesn't come in, then we just reserve fund it.
Or we would do it in probably
November.
At the November town meeting, we take it out of free cash.
Okay.
But we're 99.9% certain that the money's coming in. Shouldn't be an issue.
Yeah, and I was pleased, obviously, when Steve explained that and dropped it down to the 4 point something. You know, certainly I like that number a lot better. And as you said, Doug, it's still, you know, seems like it's needed and justified, but it works better for us, obviously. So, anybody else have comments? So the only thing that I wanted to bring up was I was just looking at the, you know, the policies. I'm looking at my notes. You know, free cash should be between 2 and 8%. And going to attempt to share my screen. And I think you all can see this. Is that right? Can you see? You all, anybody? Yeah.
Yeah, it's there, Jim. You're good.
So this is the forecasting spreadsheet that I think you've all seen that Dan has put out before. You know, so FY22 numbers where, you know, numbers in and around 1.7 of free cash, right? So last year we used 1.5, and again, it could be 1.6. There's some rounding numbers, there's some things, but let's just talk 1.7. So we're using 1.5 last year, 1.7 this year. I don't necessarily think inappropriate. I just want to bring it to everybody's attention, right? There's been some challenging years, and also there's a lot of federal money around. So, you know, I haven't really reconciled those two statements that, you know, it's been a tough year and there's been federal money around, but we're going to be, you know, supporting the budget in the 1.7 range or so. And then go ahead. This free cash at the end of the year, meaning next fiscal year, would be at 3.7. If you go out in the forecast, we'd have to use some more free cash. We get down to 2.3. And again, this is forecasting and so forth. And you see out here at 26, we're broke. Based on the numbers that are in the spreadsheet today, based on, you know, cash in, et cetera, you know, all of those two line items, the cash in and the expenses. So we are, you know, expected, trying to stay at 2% to 8%. So 2% of 100 million is, you're in that $2 million range. So, well, I'm not necessarily going to jump up and down and have a lot of issues with the votes that we have coming. I just, asked Dan about it. Dan had updated the spreadsheet. Wanted to just pass this on to all of us. We're in the 1.7 range of free cash use. Maybe so it's a rainy year, it's a rainy day year, and it's appropriate. I, again, basically just want to bring it to our attention and understand that, as we go out in time, there still conceivably could be some of that based on the numbers that are in here for projections. All subject to be ironed out as the forecasting committee moves on. And Dan, I don't know if you have other comments you wanted to add to this.
Yeah, one of the things I started playing around with after I sent you this spreadsheet, Jim, when I looked at the numbers, was if you'd go to Results tab, and under the schools, which is line 12. Yeah, there you go. Note in fiscal year 23, I'm assuming that because they have their CBAs, I still have 488 in fiscal year 23. If they could knock that down to 4%, so once you change that 4.9 right there, make it 4% and then go back to the same spot. Yeah, and take a look at the numbers. If you scroll down to free cash, okay, so we don't go negative. We do get below 2 million in fiscal year 26, but it's not as dire. So I don't know that the schools can get less than 488, but if they could just keep it down to 4% or a little bit less, we'll survive and we won't be out of compliance with our policy.
Dan, I'm wondering though, if you get the Steve offset that he's planning for this grant money.
That's already in here.
But that is, no, for fiscal year 22, you have it at 488 as well. And so from what I heard from Steve,
go back.
Yeah. It looks like it was 488 there from what I saw.
If you just sum the first two items, the 37,977, yeah, those two. See at the bottom, it's the 45,458, not 45,7. I've already discounted.
Right, you discounted the COVID grant money. You've taken it out, correct?
I've taken it out. This would especially be much worse if we put it back in.
Yeah.
So all I'm saying is that we got to figure out a way to get the schools to be more like the Volk and get it 3%.
Yeah. Yep.
Figure it out.
Can I make one comment on this?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
And thank you for sharing this. These numbers do, however, presuppose that we do not add anything back in at the end of the year. So this is
right.
Saying that we spend everything that we budgeted, no department adds anything back. So we know we're going to add some money back this year, number one. So I think that's not as dire there either, as it's pointed out. The other item and we can, and I'll say play with this for lack of a better word when we get going, is that part of the federal Relief Act is revenue, replacement of revenue that was lost, and they're going back to FY 2019. Don't have any guidance from ANF yet, but that could be a big game changer where what we collected in 19 was a lot more than we collected in 20 and 21 and in 22. So there could be some serious dollars there that could come back on our local receipts, certainly, that could add, because you're looking at what we budgeted, I think was 8.2 in fiscal 19, and then we budgeted, and then it's $1.2 million less in fiscal 21. So that could be a pretty good, that could help too.
Also, the new construction that you have budgeted there, I don't know. It seems like, because isn't the 2.5 include the,
That includes the power line.
so and how much was that?
I think 1.6, as I recall. And that
Right,
was their
so
figure.
let's make believe that we're gonna go back to outside of the power line.
Yeah.
The amount of things that are being put up, you're gonna be way over that 2.5 if you get the 1.6 from the power line.
Right.
Get the
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
1.6 from the power line, you're probably gonna end up in the threes somewhere.
Yeah, well, now you understand why I was hassling Victor earlier tonight.
Yeah, I mean, Victor on the assessments side is one thing, but to be fair, like, nobody wants to hear it. And I guess this is the appointed versus elected side, but frankly, like, taxes aren't terribly high here. People should like understand that. And by the way, you want to have good schools, you got to pay for them.
Yeah.
But yeah, do you know me? I'm not Mr. Collective Bargaining, like pushover, but I'm like, we don't spend that much on the schools and we don't tax that much, contrary to what every Facebook group would say. So, I mean, I think it's just people being aware, but also I understand where you're coming from, Dan, in terms of, not wanting to not being a Cassandra here around negative cash flow.
Yep. All right, Evan?
I just wanted to weigh in on that conversation. Like it looks like we might have a great year in new growth, but from a relative novice, I guess, when it comes to forecasting, what's concerning me here is looking at a trend line that looks like this in terms of reserves. And so what Dan's trying to do is project sort of a sustainable path forward. And, I know everybody's tired of hearing, or a lot of people are tired of hearing about the 4% annual benchmark. But he keeps repeating it every year because it still matters. And we're seeing it in those trend lines. And, you can't, yeah, Doug, we might have a great year in new growth, but you can't count, like, how long does that last for? Eventually we're built out, and I don't know how close we are right now, but just looking around, sort of kind of looks like we're getting close. And so, it really does, it comes down to the contracts, and we say this every stinking year. I've said, I said it for 3 years on the school committee, and and it's been said on the finance committee every year. And at some point, like, I have a conflict with the school budget, frankly, and I don't mean a conflict of interest. I mean an internal conflict. Like, I don't know what to do, because I don't think Doug Lyons is coming forward with a proposal that would otherwise be super unreasonable. I think, being a teacher in Wakefield right now is a pretty good gig, frankly. But at some point, we're not cutting positions. Great. No one wants to cut teachers, but at some point, if your wage line is going to go up 4 or 5, 6% a year, contracts on the town and the school side have to get more strict. I mean, we got to go through a 3-year cycle where we actually get into the 1s and the 2s, or the between 1 and 2 on COLAs annually. And if they're, frankly, if we don't do that, at some point there has to be consequences. But every year, sort of, we get soft on that, and we let them get away with adding positions again. And so, I don't know, at some point, I think we need to deal with it, because that's a little bit of an alarming trend line. I know we're being conservative in our forecasting, but I think that trend line kind of speaks for itself. So.
Don.
Yeah, so my question is, it looks like 2/3 of the shortfall this year, though, is as Steve mentioned, the fall off in local receipts. And I guess we're 9 months into FY21. So looking at that 7,000 number, is that what we're looking at for FY21 realistically, or do we have a sense of how it's going to end up at this point? And then how quickly can we build that back up to the 8.2 that we were at prior to the pandemic?
So Kevin, do you know where we are on cash receipts
I was gonna be running reports at the end of the month for the end of the quarter. I'd have a better idea, but I know motor vehicle excise were down, I think it was at least 5%. The meals tax, hotel tax, we're taking big hits there. But until I see those reports,
I didn't think we were that bad on meals. I thought it was just hotels that were atrocious.
No, meals, I think we're like 50% of what we normally are at. So if we were planning on getting $1 million in on both of those items together in total, we were about half of, if we got into $500,000, I was going to be happy.
All right, so I guess, Dawn, maybe we'll, when we come back again in a few weeks, Kevin will have some numbers. We can understand the cash in, local receipts. Okay.
Great, thanks. That'd be great.
I'm going to stop sharing unless anybody has objections or other input they want to cover on the sheet. All right. Comments from others? Okay. Steve, I didn't call you today and ask schedule. What are we thinking?
I would hope that we could have our meeting on the 8th. Did we talk about that April 8th date?
I think so.
Reason being is that, well, town meeting is May 8th, and we can certainly meet between April 8th and May 8th.
Right.
Reason being is that under the charter, there is a requirement that the chair of the finance committee send me a letter saying they've reviewed all the budgets, et cetera, 21 days ahead of town meeting. So the 8th would certainly take us. The 15th would be 15th would actually do it too. I think it's 21 days.
Okay. All right, I'll get in touch with you later this week, early next, but folks should assume 4/8 would be the next meeting date for now. No other questions, comments? I'll entertain a motion.
Before we
Yep.
do, one thing that we will have to, hopefully the town will get some good bids on land for sale in Stoneham, land of the Spartans. Are the Spartans still allowed, Gerard? Just want to make sure.
I'm watching, hopefully. I hope there's no aggrieved Greeks hanging around.
So that will be something, it might be a couple $100,000 that could be added to our coffers anyway, which could help.
All right. Anybody have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Any second?
Second.
Who was that? Seconded by Dan?
Yeah.
Moved by Gerard, seconded by Dan. Thank you all. Appreciate it.